WTF reveals on paternity court.
Her mother says what to you?
She said, that is your daughter that followed me in, and I don't want you telling her anything until I pass away.
You called both of them dad?
I did, yes, Your Honor. I didn't know just how to take this. I just felt like this should have been done, by the adults in my life.
Mrs. Garcia and Mr. Johnson were lifelong friends for over 2 decades. But guess what? The man had been keeping a secret from her for all these years. A secret that could rock their friendship to its core. And it did, as he claimed he was her real father. A roller coaster of emotions coming right up, people.
I've always wanted to have a father. My father was very abusive, and I watched my mother go through a second marriage with the same type of abuse. So I've always felt close to Rusty, and I never knew why. I never could understand this feeling, that was always there with him. So today, if it's true, I want to know it.
Who knew a night visit in Lake Isabel would turn out to be a night to remember? That is exactly what happened between the baby mama and the alleged baby daddy. The defendant took care of a stranger he found in a vulnerable situation, but he ended up taking care of her a lot more. Oh yeah!
I picked her up and put her in the truck and cleaned her up, and she said, I can't go home until I know that he's in bed passed out.
And what happens?
Well, got to talking, one thing led to another, and sex was involved.
And that was the last time you heard from her for 28 years?
Right.
Well, after that one night, it was a total no-show for 28 years. Yeah, you heard that right. But fear not, mates, as fate was once again on their side. And these people ended up meeting again. Though Miss Garcia instantly felt a connection to him, which only now made sense to her. But by then, vows were already made to keep secrets hidden.
Her mother says what to you?
She said, that is your daughter that followed me in, and I don't want you telling her anything until I pass away.
How do you get to the point where you decide, I'm no longer going to keep this secret?
I asked her to sit down and I want to talk to her, and I explained everything.
Now, they kept the secret for all these years, but then the baby mama passed away. So the baby daddy wasn't bound by that vow anymore. And guess what he did? Yep, he dropped the bombshell. Moreover, he even included the supposed daughter in his will. I mean, what? And that was precisely the reaction of his family as well.
Your family is not completely pleased that you've included Ms. Garcia in your will. Is that correct?
Right.
And Ms. Garcia, your sister, doubts that Mr. Johnston is in fact your father.
Yes, she does. I was under the assumption that my mother told him right before she died, which was in 2009. I just found out today.
With bated breath, the moment of truth was upon them. The years of secrecy were finally over, and real answers were about to be delivered. Was keeping that secret worth it or not? We are about to find out.
When it comes to Cindy Lee Garcia, Mr. Johnston, you are not her father.
This young lady is very important to me. I love her. She is my child. And as far as anything goes on my part, if she needs me, I'm there.
While Miss Sheets had spent her whole life believing 2 possible men had the potential of being her father, the defendant, on the other hand, just got wind of this news pretty recently. Talk about the shock of a lifetime, right? And now these guys were here to get to the bottom of this paternity mess.
I've been with her since she was born, 35 years, and embedded in my heart.
So it is up to the court whether or not there is sufficient evidence to order a paternity test. Why do you need the court to grant this test?
I know Mr. Rhodes as my father initially, but after the breakup of my parents, she introduced me to Mr. Smith.
Now, the plaintiff spent her whole life playing the who is my daddy game between these 2 guys. It's like a sitcom where everyone's the dad. And no one's the dad, but all was happening in the same episode. And even having the 2 possibilities, the birth certificate still had no father listed. Nada!
Now, you submitted to the court a copy of your birth certificate, your name listed under the child's name, and under father's name, there's no one listed.
Right, I never was giving just a clear definition of, hey, this is your father, this is not. I was told both were at one time, and I was told, you know, at one time one wasn't and one was.
Cue the emotions, people, because we were moving on to the devastation of the father. For 30+ years, this man believed she was his daughter. And then, bam! The said daughter demanded a paternity test. Well, his world got truly rocked. And why wouldn't it, since all that popping in and out of the life of baby mama caught up to him now?
Someone wanted a paternity test because they thought you weren't their biological father, and that person was the young woman you believed to be your daughter.
Yes, Shauna, I did.
What did you feel like when you got that call?
I'm confident and I know this is my daughter. It's very confusing, but the natural feeling that I have is this my daughter and can't nobody tell me nothing else.
Well, since the baby daddy never questioned paternity till now, he stood up to his fatherly duties, all thanks to Grandma. But you wouldn't believe it when I said that the other potential baby daddy stepped up too. Yeah, no kidding. Talk about the confusion of a lifetime, right?
I remember her looking at me like, who are you? And I didn't really pay no attention, but I felt it, that she was confused. But I said, no, from my grandmother telling me this is my child, I've been embedded in me. I'm gonna love this child and take care of the best I can, regardless of what's going on. Because one day when she's grown, I'll be able to tell the story and let her know that I loved her since birth.
If you thought that was the end of the confusing mess, you are so mistaken, my friends, because Miss Sheets just delivered more. It seemed both guys visited her on and off, and she referred to both of them as Dad. Seriously, woman? Now, add a dash of teenage confusion and ding ding ding, you've got a recipe for a tangled web of paternity uncertainty.
You called both of them Dad?
I did, yes, Your Honor. I didn't know, like, hey, you know, about DNA tests. I didn't know, you know. I just felt like this should have been done, you know, by the adults in my life. I just can't let this go on any longer. I have to know.
4 years old, you don't know anything. But when you get 13 or you get in school and everybody's got one dad.
Yes.
By the looks of it, the baby daddy did know that other players were in the game as well, but his focus was still on the baby mommy. So much so he came back from serving and had plans to marry the woman. But in a twist of fate, mommy had made other plans by then. Furthermore, when the daughter demanded some answers from the mother, there was none. And the conception window didn't help either.
Did you ever ask your mom?
She just kind of didn't give me a straight answer. I never got a straight answer. I tried to get one. All three of us sat down together.
Really?
Yes, and they tried to calculate conception, and they just couldn't quite get it together. But my question was, why did he pay child support my entire life until I was 18?
Let's stir up the confusion gravy even more, shall we? Because we were on this train and we have to see it through. Unfortunately, the other baby daddy had also passed away. His son was there to shed some light on this mess. Well, he knew the plaintiff for a decade, and his father told him the truth at one point as well. Wow!
I actually went to her house a couple of times and we talked, and through life we lost contact. And after that, I sat down with my dad and I asked him seriously, you know, is this my sister? And you know, he was the kind of guy who, you know, he joked around, he was very animated, but he very firmly and strongly looked me in the eyes and said, yeah, I believe that this is your sister, my daughter.
Moving on, we got to see poor Mr. Garcia trying desperately to make sense of this chaotic paternity mess. It was clear he wanted to be a father to the plaintiff, but the presence of the other guy made it difficult as heck. So much so, he could have faced jail time. Ouch!
And I always knew a black cloud was over my head with her because I said, this is my daughter. Why can't I go get her and take her to Chicago and raise her? You know, I would come to town to see her, everybody looking at me strange. They would never let me take her to go to the store to get her school clothes. They told me, no, go get them and bring them back. I was never able to spend time with her because I'm nothing. He had his name on her.
Judge Lake ended up granted the paternity test. Well, frankly, the whole confusion was screaming for it. It was finally time to wrap up this 3-decade mystery and sort out the paternity mess for once and all. Here we go!
It has been determined by this court. The biological father is Mr. Rhodes.
Really? Oh my God.
I I hear you saying, Miss Sheets, you so happy. It's good to see you smile. I don't think I saw you smile last time we saw you.
A long-lost father was finally ready to step up to the role of fatherhood. However, it was too late now, according to Miss Washington. Mr. Alexander decided to reconnect after 29 long years. But the daughter wasn't having it. The baby daddy took his sweet time taking this decision.
So how did it feel when you finally heard this young woman's voice?
I felt real good, because I had my daughter search for it and went on Facebook to find it, and I was so happy that I finally got in touch with my daughter.
So, Miss Washington, I see the tears in your eyes, honey.
He contacted me at 29. Like, you missed out. If I was, you would have been there, not at 29.
Miss Washington recounted the day she first heard of Mr. Alexander in like ever, and it wasn't the Hallmark reunion the guy was hoping for. Oh no, it was a 29-year late phone call. But what was even more frustrating was that the guy just popped in, dropped this bomb, and then went MIA again. Yeah, the nerve of this man.
One night my phone rang. He's like, I'm looking for Tish, and I'm like, who is this? And he's like, I'm your dad. I told him I never heard of him before. He mentioned my granddaddy and my grandma, but I'm 29. Where have you been? My mom passed, he wasn't there. My granddaddy, my grandma passed, he wasn't there. And then he got to talking to me, and I'm like, but where have you been? I'm 29.
Now, the defendant had no clue about this baby daddy. But wait, she had known another was a possible candidate when she was 18. And she took it upon herself to get to the bottom of this paternity issue then, and went to meet the said guy, but only to receive disappointment and hurt in the end.
She was telling me the whole time that that was my father, and he wanted to meet up, and I had to catch the city bus to go meet him. We sat down, and he was like, he didn't know, but he had a wife and kids already, and he didn't want to mess that up. So I was like, I'm ready to go, and I never saw him or talked to him again.
Shedding some light on how these guys met initially, Mr. Alexander brought along a witness. And the said witness played matchmaker way back in 1976. And James, aka Mr. Alexander, ended up in the same social brew with Miss Gladys. However, the baby mama soon pulled a no-show afterwards, and so the mess began.
James had left me and went somewhere else. He didn't work at my new location, okay? So the next time I hear James, he's all proud. He said, man, have you seen Gladys? I said, no, I haven't. He said, I got a baby by her. So he was excited and happy, but hurt that he couldn't find her.
But it is your testimony that he was looking for his little girl.
He was.
Oh, ma'am.
He talked about her.
Oh, ma'am.
He talked about this young lady here.
Dear Lord, the woman couldn't catch a break. Miss Washington had no father growing up. Then she lost her mother. If that wasn't enough, she got terminally ill, and at this point, she was in desperate need of a family. But the said baby daddy was heck of a lot difficult to get a hold of.
When I was going through cancer, I didn't have nobody. My mom not here, but then I was trying to get in contact with him because I needed a donor for my transplant, and he wasn't nowhere to be found because we was like on and off with, contacting each other.
Okay.
And so for me to contact him, I have to go through his one daughter in Alabama. She used to call me asking me if I know where he was. So I'm like, no.
Moving on, the defendant gets in contact with Mr. Alexander, and they get a DNA test done on their own. But the laboratory ended up mixing it up and made them wait 3 weeks instead of 3 days. Wow, the lady luck was surely not in their favor.
In 2 to 3 days, they'll let us know. 3 weeks went by.
You had to call her back?
Yes.
And then she says, I'm sorry, he's not your father.
Yes.
Do you remember her telling you that they called back and the lab said that you were not her biological father?
Yes, Your Honor, I remember that, and we both felt that it was undecided decision that they made on their behalf because it just didn't seem right.
As the courtroom drama unfolds further, we get to know that the defendant's transplant might hinder the DNA results being conclusive. But leave it to the judge to get a professional opinion about it. And so, Dr. Michael Bard, the DNA expert, took the stand and dropped a bombshell about the bone marrow transplant. And that led to the defendant being way too honest.
What are you hoping for, Mr. Alexander? And are you hoping that Miss Washington is your biological daughter? Are some of the tears because you feel guilty for all the years that you missed out on?
Yes, to a certain extent, it is that, Your Honor. I'm feeling
Do you
guilty.
feel like you let her down?
Yes, I do, Your Honor, to a certain extent.
I don't want him to be now.
It was time to untangle this decades-old paternity saga and reach the final chapter of it. That being the DNA results. The potential daddy-daughter duo were certainly hoping for different outcomes. Let's see which way the dice rolls.
It has been determined by this court, Mr. Alexander, you are not the father. Absolutely.
I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.